4 years ago, Dave Dombrowski, the Red Sox president of baseball operations, who was brought in 4 years earlier to assemble a championship caliber team, something he ended up delivering on, was fired in the middle of a Sunday night weeks before the 2019 season was even finished. This was less than a year after the Red Sox won the World Series, having the greatest, most successful season in franchise history, winning 108 games in their fourth title in 15 years. But the Dombrowski firing seemed to be in the works soon after that championship actually happened, when Dombrowski had a conversation with Red Sox ownership, and things were apparently clear that the two sides had different visions on how to go about the future of the franchise. The Red Sox finished in a distant third place in 2019, and there were now a lot of important decisions to be made regarding the future of the team. The 2018 MVP and superstar Mookie Betts was a year away from free agency. Xander Bogaerts would eventually hit that too. Devers, the core really had a lot of question marks as far as who was going to be around for much longer, and on top of that, they now didn't even have someone to decide how to go about all this, since Dombrowski was of course fired. About a month later, Chaim Bloom became that someone, getting plucked from the Tampa Bay Rays front office to run the ship in Boston, becoming their chief baseball officer. Whatever that means, they just have fancy names for all these positions. Well, 4 years later, Chaim Bloom has been fired. How did we get here? Let's go back to the beginning. Before we go back in time, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you enjoy the content and haven't yet. Thank you. The first major thing Chaim Bloom did as the Red Sox new front office leader was to trade Mookie Betts to the Dodgers. Now, this was something ownership was very much wanting to do. I'm not going to get into the whole Mookie Betts Red Sox contract situation, but to sum it up, the Red Sox ownership clearly wasn't too eager on giving Mookie what he felt he was worth, and I have a feeling that if Bloom didn't agree with the idea of trading Mookie, he wouldn't have gotten the job. John Henry and the ownership seemed hell-bent on a trade, decided Chaim was the guy to do it and to continue to build the team, and so he did, sending Mookie off to the Dodgers with David Price in half of his contract in exchange for Alex Verdugo, Jeter Downs, and Connor Wong. Alex Verdugo has been a nice player for the Red Sox since getting to Boston. Does he lack some power? Sure, yeah, he does, and he's not the greatest hitter ever, and he's even had some hustle and clubhouse issues this year, getting benched twice by manager Alex Cora for not hustling while running the bases and for showing up late to the ballpark. Beside all of that, in the 4 years Verdugo has been on the Red Sox, he's been a solid player. Connor Wong has turned out to be a weak hitting catcher, and as far as Jeter Downs, he is on the Nationals now. Downs never found his way in the Red Sox system, eventually getting designated for assignment. Now, looking back, the Mookie trade obviously doesn't look great, but Mookie was bound to hit free agency anyway, and the Red Sox still would have had to pay up if they wanted to keep him. The pandemic happened, Mookie decided to sign an extension with the Dodgers for the rest of his career, and that's that. So that was the first big move by Chaim. And 2020 also happened to end up being the most forgettable and ridiculously awful Red Sox season probably of all time. Part of that is because it seemed fake anyway, with the 60-game season and no fans, but yeah, it was bad. I mean, the Red Sox basically had random dudes from who knows where out there giving up bombs every night. It was wild. Heading into 2021, the Red Sox were looked at as a team that had slight potential, but weren't close to being the favorites due to them kind of being in a retooling period. Yet they ended up shocking everybody, and that led me to make this video, the one that I'm currently getting absolutely clowned on for all over the internet. Hell, even Freezing Cold Takes decided to roast me. And I mean, what can I say? I have nothing else than to take this one on the chin. But you have to at least understand where I was coming from at the time, even if it aged very poorly looking back. Nobody expected the Red Sox to do jack shit in 2021, yet they went out and won 92 games, made the playoffs, took down the Yankees in the wildcard game, the 100-win first-place Rays in the ALDS, before ending their season just 2 games away from a World Series appearance. I mean, it was magical, and in large part because of the moves Chaim Bloom had made. Nick Pivetta was traded to Boston in 2020 for Heath Hembree and Brandon Workman to the Phillies, who were desperate for bullpen arms, and Hembree went on a pitch to an ERA of almost 13 with the Phillies, and as for Brandon Workman, he has since retired and became a real estate agent. Meanwhile, Nick Pivetta became a big part in the 2021 Red Sox success, especially down the stretch, making a lot of starts, struck out Juan Soto to clinch the playoffs on the final day of the regular season, and was a monster in the postseason out of the bullpen. Chaim also picked up Garrett Whitlock before the 2021 season from the Yankees, someone who throws 73 and a third innings with a 1.96 ERA out of the bullpen. He was nasty. Christian Arroyo, another Chaim Bloom pickup, was a valuable hitter and overall player for the Sox. Alex Verdugo had a good year. Hunter Renfroe, someone Chaim signed for 2021, was awesome. Same with Kike Hernandez. I mean, yes, most of the 2021 roster were guys that were already in Boston, but Bloom definitely had his fingerprints all over this team and their success that season. And going into 2022, things were looking even better, with Chaim making the biggest signing with the Red Sox before the season, inking free agent Trevor Story to a 6-year, $140 million deal. One thing many questioned him on was when he traded Hunter Renfroe, though, right before the lockout, someone who had just had a great first year in Boston, to the Brewers in exchange for a prospect in Jackie Bradley Jr., someone Red Sox fans were very familiar with. But overall, there was reason to be excited for the 2022 season. Unfortunately, 2022 just did not live up to what had come in 2021. In fact, it was a pretty steep drop-off, going from 92 wins to 78 wins, also finishing in last place in the AL East. The trade deadline was the most confusing part of the season when Chaim Bloom decided not to trade JD Martinez, Xander Bogaerts, or Nathan Eovaldi, three valuable players who were about to hit free agency. The team wasn't in the best spot at the deadline, yet Chaim didn't feel the need to trade them for future young assets before they leave for virtually nothing in free agency, which is what would end up happening. He did trade longtime Red Sox catcher Christian Vazquez to the Astros, which I feel was a good move. A lot of Red Sox players were apparently not happy about that move, really because of the emotional side of it, obviously, but what the team got in return for him was pretty good. But overall, the Red Sox ended up staying over the luxury tax threshold while also not making the postseason, while also not trading any of their top players about to hit free agency. So kind of a disaster. The new big signing, Trevor Story, was bad, and overall it was just an incredibly frustrating season. And things would only get more frustrating. Xander Bogaerts was the first to go, signing an 11-year contract with the San Diego Padres, and this is absolutely something Chaim botched. Back in spring training of 2022, so Xander's last year under contract with the Red Sox offered Bogaerts an extension that a friend of Xander's referred to as a slap in the face. Skip ahead to right before he signed with the Padres, and Chaim Bloom's final offer to Xander was 6 years, $160 million. The sad and tough thing to swallow is, if you're a Red Sox fan, as it's been widely reported that offer, 6 years, $160 million, would have gotten the job done back in spring training. Xander would have likely taken it rather than the other deal he didn't even consider. So why didn't he take it now? Well, when you have the Padres offering you $120 million more, it's going to be kind of hard to not take that deal. It doesn't matter how loyal Xander was to the Red Sox, he'd probably be an idiot to not take that much more money with the Padres, and so he did. And with that, add yet another homegrown superstar that was now on another franchise. JD Martinez followed that up with signing a 1-year deal with the Dodgers, and this wasn't looked at as that big of a deal, especially compared to Xander. Considering 2022 was a very disappointing season for him, his power was down, and I don't think that many people actually expected the Red Sox to bring him back. Nathan Eovaldi, well, that is another botched situation by Chaim Bloom. Eovaldi was very open to the idea of returning to Boston. He loved it there, and actually gave the Red Sox a chance to counter the Texas Rangers offer of $34 million over 2 years, but the Red Sox backed out. Eovaldi himself has even talked about how positive he was going to return to the Red Sox, saying that he and his agent stayed in contact with everybody during the negotiation process, letting them know other deals that they were getting, trying to make sure that they kept that door open as long as possible. But it finally came to that point where it was time to move on. In the middle of December last year, I made a video regarding some things I had heard about Chaim Bloom from a source of mine who knows people. And by the way, if you don't believe me, what I talked about in that video ended up being confirmed by a Red Sox beat reporter who reported the exact same thing, but like 4 days after I did. What I heard was that after the 2022 season ended, someone from within the Red Sox organization texted to my source, "I think we're going to do bad this offseason." What I also then heard, which is what was reported by a beat reporter, is that Chaim Bloom is too slow, insecure, doubts himself, isn't good under pressure, and the whole front office knows it. He was losing trust from his own people within. Okay, so at this point, there's full-on panic in the streets in Boston. Mookie's long gone, Xander's now gone, so is JD and Eovaldi. Who's next? Everyone then turned to Rafael Devers, who was set to become a free agent after the 2023 season, expecting him to now be another homegrown guy along with Mookie and Xander to be traded away. Thankfully, that didn't happen. Chaim and the Red Sox agreed to an 11-year, $331 million contract extension, sigh of relief. But still, Devers is a guy who'd already been on the team. You just kept him while losing several others, so it's not really much of an improvement, if anything. So although keeping Raffy was great, there was still a lot of work to be done and things that would have to go right for the Red Sox to make the postseason. One of the longest tenured Red Sox relievers ever, Matt Barnes, was then traded to the Marlins in exchange for lefty reliever Richard Blair. This trade was basically a lose-lose situation. Barnes has been terrible for the Marlins, and Blair was basically just batting practice in the form of a player. So yeah, I mean, you can't complain too much on that one, but what you can complain about, however, is when Chaim Bloom made the decision to extend Matt Barnes back in 2021. Since signing that extension, he has been abysmal, so that's an L. And 2023 hasn't been good for the Red Sox. There are some bright spots, though, and I'll mention those first. Masataka Yoshida, the Japanese outfielder who was ironically signed by the Red Sox hours before Xander signed with the Padres, has been a really solid hitter for the team as expected. Many believe that Bloom and the Red Sox overpaid for him, but he's shown that he can hit. Justin Turner, another pickup by Chaim Bloom, signing him away from the Dodgers, has been great this year. Awesome player. Amazing pickup. Adam Duvall, despite getting hurt early on, has been great when he plays. Veteran reliever Chris Martin has been incredible, silently putting up an ERA near 1 on the season in almost 50 innings. But beside that, not really many other Chaim Bloom W's. A lot of the hitters doing well on this team were drafted during the Dave Dombrowski era. James Paxton, the pitcher, should have been traded at the deadline when he was going pretty well on the mound while also becoming a free agent after this year, so it's hard to see them bringing him back, but Chaim decided not to trade him, but rather keep him, and he has since been terrible while also being hurt. Guys like Chris Sale, Tanner Houck, you can't blame Chaim for. He didn't extend Chris Sale in 2019 and he didn't draft Tanner Houck, but a pitcher like Garrett Whitlock, who Chaim signed to an extension in early 2022, has had some injury concerns with his arm while also not performing well on the mound. The 2023 Red Sox, to me, have felt like watching a movie you've already seen before that has such a mid-ending to it. It seems like for months now, I've just felt I know exactly how this season was going to end. They wouldn't be a bad team. In fact, they'd actually be above average, but just not nearly good enough to make the playoffs. It's how it's ended up, and it's how it's felt for the longest time now. The Red Sox are now currently in the battle for 4th place with the Yankees, but at this point, whether they finish in last place or above the Yankees in 4th place, does it matter? Either way, it's obviously a massive disappointment of a season. So naturally, the talk of Chaim Bloom's future with the team comes up. Red Sox podcaster and baseball personality Jared Carrabis recently said on his podcast, Name Redacted, that he started to poke around and ask some people he knows on the inside with the Red Sox if they thought Chaim Bloom would make it past November. He didn't get a single yes from anybody. That was a few days ago, and now Chaim Bloom has been fired and is officially done in Boston. Just like the Dombrowski firing, this is coming at kind of a random time with the season almost over but not quite over yet, as the ownership didn't even wait till the offseason and maybe evaluate where to go from there. So the Chaim Bloom era in Boston is over. What will he be remembered for? Well, obviously the Mookie trade, botching Xander Bogaerts are 2 moves up there. As far as positives though, he did really help the farm system. The Red Sox farm system was not very good at the time Dombrowski was fired, and I mean it made sense. Dombrowski made a lot of trades over his time in Boston, gutting the minor league system. It resulted in a championship, yes, but part of the reason Bloom was brought on was to rebuild the organization from the foundation, to replenish the farm system and build a good current team while also having a good future. Sustained success. That was his motto. So yeah, the Red Sox do have a much more impressive farm system than they did 4 years ago, and I'm all about having a good farm system and always building for the future. But at the end of the day, prospects are only so valuable. Like, most of them don't even turn into what you hope they will. And the Red Sox finished in last place in 2 of Bloom's first 3 years as the head of the front office, with there being a possibility that 2023 makes it 3 out of 4 years Bloom was in charge of a last place team. That's not going to fly in Boston. Since 2004, the Red Sox have been a franchise with fans that expect to be a playoff contender every single year. Every year. That should be the goal. The vibe around the Red Sox during spring training should never be, we're not necessarily the greatest roster out there or the favorites, but if some things go right, we could be pretty good and make a run for the playoffs. But that's kind of been the vibe for pretty much every one of Chaim Bloom's spring trainings. 2022 was the only one with more hype, but only because the Red Sox, seemingly now looking back at it, overperformed in 2021. It's tiresome as a fan to see your team head into opening day with the "we'll see what happens" attitude. Like, enough of that. I'm so tired of that. If I hear the term bridge year one more time, I'm gonna lose it. A bridge year, or in other words, a year that's supposed to be a holdover for the next season, is something the Kansas City Royals do, or the Diamondbacks, the Rockies. You know what I'm getting at here. The Red Sox should never have the mentality of not totally being all in on winning and rather just cautiously building for the future. It's all about balance. The last thing I want is for the Red Sox to start throwing money at everyone recklessly. but they also shouldn't be cheap and just shoot for prospects all the time. Now, I'm no general manager, president of baseball operations, chief baseball officer, whatever the hell you want to call it. There's a reason I'm sitting behind a microphone right now and not in the baseball team's front office, but that's just how I feel. To be balanced, you can't be too money spending happy or too cheap and small market minded. And I feel like Chaim Bloom just kept putting this team in a we'll see what happens kind of situation every year. I was talking about it today with a source I have, someone who I look at as a good friend of mine, and he made a good point that Chaim Bloom is a smart guy and could be a part of an organization for scouting or something, but he's not meant to be someone who is in charge of everything running the team. Or at least it didn't seem that way, obviously, with his time in Boston. Who's next in Boston? The hope that it'd be Theo Epstein returning lasted a whole 5 minutes after Red Sox president Sam Kennedy immediately said that he is ruling out Epstein as a potential replacement. Whoever it is, it's going to be the Red Sox third head of baseball operations in the last decade. Meanwhile, over in Washington, D.C., the Nationals just recently extended their general manager, Mike Rizzo, someone who had already been with the organization since 2006 and has been the general manager since 2013. I don't know if that really means anything, but I just found the obvious difference between them and the Red Sox general manager situations interesting. So at the end of it all, Chaim Bloom did some good and some bad in Boston. Overall, though, the bad outweighs the good. He lost 2 homegrown stars, and the team was at the bottom of the division in 3 of his 4 years running the ship. That's how I'm going to remember the Chaim Bloom era.